He started slowly. The pointed tips of his claws scraped against the skin of my belly. With the skill of a surgeon, he gradually pushed down and embedded each claw into my flesh. Mr. Wink muffled my screams with his other hand. His mouth emerged from the palm and began to lick and bite perversely on my face. The tongue relentlessly tried to pry my lips forcibly apart to enter into my mouth. Mr. Wink continued his torment of my flesh, licking and spitting on every cut. I knew this would be the end, even if I survived the night. The infection he carried in his saliva would consume me. He had never been this violent before. Somehow he knew of my visitor. He was enraged. He now viewed me as rotten and no good. I had been made undesirable. And now he meant to kill me. Through the cloud of pain, a flash of movement from behind Mr. Wink caught my eye. Something gracefully jumped to the top of the television from the floor. It sat with stillness in a regal poise, unique to the feline species. It watched me intensely, then slightly cocked its head. The tiny movement was enough to catch and reflect the moonlight in its eyes, and two vibrant green orbs exploded into existence. I remembered those eyes from long ago. The shape slightly nodded its head, as if giving me permission. I did something I have never done before. I lifted my eyes and looked into that face that had haunted me for so long. I had never really looked at it, not with any real attention to detail. I never saw how black the eyes were, round and ugly. I never noticed the flaccid skin the eyes were nestled within, making them even more hideous. My hands began to twitch under the oppressive force of the mist. The jittery, frantic eye movements clearly showed excitement at what they saw, my suffering. A rage began to emerge within me like hot liquid. The mist melted away, and my hands slowly closed into a fist. The muscles in my arms and legs and chest contracted as the mist stretched beyond its capacity and began to snap like strands of rope. It was at that moment that Mr. Wink noticed me looking at him. I cocked my arm back as far as I could go. For a split second, we made eye contact. Every one of those dirty, ugly eyes focused on me, and a look of confusion spread across his face. It paused in uncertainty and slightly loosened its grip on me. I knew this was my only opportunity. I took it and struck. I drove my fist toward the center of its face with a right hook powered by 22 years of fear, pain, and despair. To my complete astonishment, my arm cut through the paralyzing mist and my fist made contact with a very satisfying thud directly to the face. Unprepared for the blow, Mr. Wink's head snapped back like a rag doll, It stumbled backwards with its arms flailing wildly in the air before crashing into my cheap dinner table. It was almost comical in its fall. I stood there astonished at what I had done. I looked down at my fist and saw redness on my knuckles. It wasn't redness from bruising or damage. They glowed softly like molten steel. Mr. Wink lifted his torso like a snake and looked at me. The misty formation swirled frantically around its body. The accumulation seemed to appear heavier around his face, giving it the appearance of tears welling up in his eyes. The look on his face showed both surprise and bewilderment, as if he were saying, "You hit me." The feline shape, that was now much more recognizable, climbed on top of an end table to our left. It casually licked its front paw to clean his face and ears, glancing at me sporadically, trying to feign disinterest. I knew better. I stood over Mr. Wink and kicked him. I kicked him again and again and again. I grabbed him by the throat and went to a blind rage and unleashed a barrage of blows fueled by fury and hate. Mr. Wink collapsed once more to the ground. He howled in indignation before picking himself up. With outstretched arms, claws out, and a loud hiss, he attacked with his incredible speed, zipping from the floor, then to the ceiling, and then clinging alongside the wall with a velocity almost too quick for the human eye to perceive. At the onset of his attack, my sight suddenly shifted to follow his movement. Like a reflex, everything within my vision slowed down to a slow-motion crawl. No, that wasn't quite right. I could still see him maneuver with his actual superior speed. But at the same time, I saw him at a snail-paced speed. When Mr. Wink went in for the kill, I found that this dual perception and this unusual ability gave me time to anticipate, avoid, and strike. Mr. Wink's rage exploded from having all his attacks countered and blocked. His final humiliation was having his face smashed into the wall using his own momentum. Mr. Wink changed his tactics, and his vaporous mist converged on his right arm and solidified, forming a pointed blade. His cloak of mist separated into numerous whip-like strands and began snapping and slashing in the air. Several of the strands caught me on my thigh and chest, cutting me deeply. I quickly grabbed an aluminum bat I kept in the corner for the crackheads that frequented the area. Mr. Wink lunged at me, and I dodged to the left and ducked under its follow-up slashes. Another crack from the strands of mist cut me on my hip. He stabbed at me and I spun as his blade pierced the wall where I just stood moments ago. In one graceful movement, I turned around from blocking his spear and brought the bat down hard on the base of his skull. There was a satisfying crack as he collapsed in a heap to the ground. I swung the bat down on the dark shape quivering on the floor again and again in great overhead arcs. His flesh was clinging to the end of the bat in strands of black tar-like mucus. He wailed in pain and agony with each impact. The mysterious cat jumped down from its perch and began to interweave between my feet, affectionately rubbing against them in a graceful figure eight. I dropped the bat, reached down, grabbed Mr. Wink by the throat, and brought him mere inches from my face, foreheads almost touching. He conveyed images into my head seeking compassion and forgiveness, and saturated me with emotions begging for mercy and sympathy, all the things he never offered me. Once more, I did something that it never would have thought possible. I sent a powerful image of my own directly into its mind. It was so powerful that oily black blood sprayed out of the corners of his eyes, nose, and mouth. Into its head, I slammed an image of a little boy, looking up at his mommy and daddy and holding their hands with only one single wish. I wish I could be normal. I raised and poised my hand like a mighty cobra and extended 2 fingers into the shape of hooks. This time, I spoke with my voice. I wanted him to hear me. Look at me! I cocked my wrist to angle his head to face me. I needed to see those eyes. I wanted him to see mine. My kitty had jumped up to a chair next to us and began to purr intently, watching the scene. Never again will you control me. My grasp on his throat tightened. Never again will you hold me down. I lifted him higher. Never again will I be your victim. I stretched my arm back, readying it to strike. Never again, you son of a bitch. I plunged 2 fingers into the large winking eye on his forehead, and I went deep. I went deeper than anyone has ever gone before. I extended my remaining fingers and embedded them in the surrounding eyes and squeezed as hard as I could until the bone ridges of the eye sockets collapsed under the force of my grip. I increased my effort and went deeper and deeper. I was looking for something. I didn't know what it was or even if it had a name, but I knew it was there. I felt something brush the tips of my fingers. I went in a little bit further and got a grasp on it. I pulled it out like it was a carrot buried in the ground. I removed my hand from the wailing creature and looked at my prize. I was holding a bundle of fluorescent roots that encapsulated a wispy glowing orb. The sphere slightly flickered and slowly rotated within the entanglement of gleaming roots. I don't know why. It was pure instinct, just like I don't know how I knew it was there. But I shoved the orb into my mouth and I swallowed it whole. Mr. Wink's body began to thrash violently and convulse with loud screams of agony. His body collapsed on itself as it lost its ability to hold its form. He eventually disintegrated into a mucus-like fluid that continued to give off wispy puffs of vapor. I heard a sweet meow from behind me. The cat was now standing by the mahogany box containing a glass jar. I opened the box, removed the beautiful glass object, and held its open end towards the remains of Mr. Wink. With an intense swoosh of air, the monster was instantly sucked into the jar. I flipped the lid over and locked down the silver latch. It snapped into place, and I heard an echoing kerchunk boom in my mind. The runes etched into the glass glowed a brilliant green and slowly faded. I held up the jar and looked at its contents intensely. It swirled within the jar with sharp movements, as if it were confused and disorientated. It was still alive, but now trapped forever within the confines of the small container. It would never escape. Even if it did, it would never have the ability to cross back over to its realm, nor did it have any ability to touch or interact with our side of the physical world ever again. I heard the meow once more and found my kitty had curled up on the sofa. He looked at me, and I knew he was here to stay. He let out a giant yawn and lowered his head upon the cushion. His gaze beckoned to me as if to tell me, "Come, it is time to rest now." I love my little kitty. He is my best friend in the whole world. I'm driving through the winding roads that line the breathtaking mountainous landscapes of the oceanside parts of the East Coast. The roaring engine of my brand new Mustang rumbles as I push 95 miles per hour. I slightly press down on the pedal to accelerate the car to 110 miles per hour. I really can't be late for this appointment. I love the massive sound in my car. It's invigorating. I've always loved muscle cars. It was a hard decision choosing between the Mustang or Camaro. I liked them both. In the end, I just gave in and bought them both. In the days that followed that final night, the swirling fluid within the jar began to speak with faint images. The familiar voice made of pictures were begging to be released. It expressed great suffering. It said it was in agony, and the walls of its prison burned its flesh terribly. It pleaded for relief. The torment was too much. It told me it had a proposition to offer. It showed me an abandoned house located in eastern Louisiana. It said to go there. I asked, why would I ever do that? Expressions of goodwill filled my mind. It wished to show me a small example of the knowledge it could share with me. Against my better judgment, I went and located the old house exactly where I was told it would be. It was a large abandoned mansion, ravaged by time and nature. I went to the farthest corner of the west wing and found floorboarding that was slightly a different shade of color from the others, exactly as I was told there would be. I tore out the floor and found it opened up to a hidden sub-basement that appeared too modern to have been built at the time of the home's construction. I entered the tiny space and found exactly what I was promised. A stockpile of hidden riches and money. Wealth beyond my wildest dreams. All for me. Just like I was told there would be. The entity imprisoned in its jar was giddy and full of anticipation upon my return. It expressed pride in itself for giving me everything it had promised. And now it was my turn. It demanded its freedom for fulfilling its promise. I slowly reached for the jar and carefully held it in my hand. I gave it a good shake to make sure the viscous fluid would coat the entire inner surface of the glass walls. Seeing how terribly the wall burnt its skin, I laughed at the jar and put it back in the chest and closed it. I locked the box and placed it safely in the back of my closet. I closed the door, entirely blocking out the muffled screams of rage. Learning about this creature was difficult at first. After tireless work, I stumbled onto obscure accounts and the legends of the Native American tribes of the Midwest. I traveled there at once to meet with the tribal council. I told them my story. The kindly old council elder dismissed the others. Once alone, he said, "They are called the I-Daka-Duashi, he who harvests from within the child. Legends say the harvesters were known to prey on the many tribes of the plains that flourished in those days. It acquired the young ones and tormented them for their Ada-Gea-Dewa, the innocence of a child." I was told that an individual harvester could have up to 20 children in its herd at one time. The life expectancy for the unfortunate child had never been known to exceed 13 years of age. Death came for the child, mostly in the form of suicide. The old chief looked at me with gentle but sad eyes and said, "Never in our people's history has a child been spared this fate when the Daka comes." Many mighty men of medicine and warriors of the Great Spirit have tried. They all failed. None escapes Didaka's hold. None, that is, until you. He smiled and put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Do you know how you were able to achieve this great victory?" I shook my head. "It was by unseen hands that outstretched from the spirit world. I feel it in you. I see it all around you. Many gods dwell there, my young friend. They take interest in some of us for reasons unknown and will guide and protect us in ways we do not understand and cannot see. They also call upon us to undertake perilous quests. Their ways are shrouded in mystery, quite often giving no explanation or reason for their motives." The wise old elder then raised his hands to the sky and sang a beautiful yet powerful chant of ancient incantations sacred to his people. He took his thumb and rubbed it across my forehead. "Go now, spirit warrior. Go with my blessing. My heart soars like the eagle today, for I have lived long enough to see the birth of this spirit quest you begin. Soon, I will close my eyes to this life and awaken before my father and his fathers. I will sit before the fires of Apistotoke beside my ancestors, where stories of old and brave deeds are remembered and spoken. Under the watchful eye of the great sky spirit, I will honor them with my tale of the rise of a new mighty warrior." My little cat perked his head up from my lap and offered a humorous meow, as if he too had something to add to the conversation. The old man let out a mighty laugh and turned to the little cat who never left my side. With a joyful grin, he said, "I have not forgotten about you, little one. Go with your brother and ravage the Shadowland with the claws of a mountain lion and the strength of a mighty panther." I now spend my days traveling around the country in search of children like me. Since Mr. Wink's defeat, I have put an end to the nightmares for 5 more kids. When I met the first child, I discovered something amazing. I learned that if the child is in direct contact with me at the same time I am touching the entity, the child will absorb a small portion of my power. It's nowhere near the strength of mine, but it's enough for them to fight back. I have also discovered that objects I touch can penetrate the creature's strangling mist, rendering its ability to form barriers useless. The effects are only temporary and short-lived, but still very effective. I particularly enjoy this talent with such things as bullets, arrows, and knives. Those 5 entities were just like Mr. Wink, and just like him, they are now in my glass jar. Curiously, the liquid levels in the jar remain the same, even after adding the others. I can hear each one, but it seems that they are unaware of each other. They are combined within the mystical structure alone, all alone in a stinging prison that burns their skin. Today, I'm on my way to see a little girl named Joanna who lives in a small town in northern New Hampshire. She has the most beautiful eyes and a face that radiates innocence. She has a vlog where she shares the details of her sad and lonely life. She's often seen crying with despair at the unending sorrow that fills her life. She doesn't know how much longer she can go on like this. Then there are the nightmares. She has suffered from the most horrible nightmares for as long as she can remember. She makes vague references to someone who is always watching her, a woman of shadows. Tonight, when the shadow woman comes, she will find Joanna is not alone. The woman will still see a frightened child, trembling with the terror only a child could know. That will please her. The woman's slithering mist will begin to approach. I will look down at the little girl, gently squeeze the hand I'm holding, and softly speak her name to reassure her that I am here. When she looks up at me, I will smile and tell her, "Tonight, I will give you everything that you will ever need. It's yours. All you have to do is reach out and take it. Now, it is your time to fight back."